Ohai. Uralsk, the city in the western Kazakhstan, on Ural River. The administrative center of the West Kazakhstan region is located on the northern outskirts of Caspian Depression. The square of the city within city line -209.83 km. Population 234,155 persons. In borders of the territory of the Ural City Administration -731.33 km. The population of 314,657 people representing 83 different nationalities and nationalities. The settlements which are administratively subordinated to city Akamet. Settlements of Zakhagansk, Derkal and Kraluzino, villages Kordon, Livkino, Meshtikovo, Cretaceous Gorky and Serebryakovo, settlement of Zhelievo. The total area of green plantings of the city is 6,000 hectares. Housing stock -4 molnem. City extent from the south on the north, about 8 km, from the west on the east about 23 km. Uralsk is located on the right coast of an average watercourse the Urals and on the left coast of the lower watercourse Chagin, in the picturesque steppe plain with high and abrupt river Yara. The right inflow of Chagin, the Derkal River, proceeds near the city and its suburb, the settlement of Derkal. The highest height, the Whistler Mountain. About 300 m. Located between the suburban urban type settlements of Zakhagansk and Kraluzino. The last was called the Whistler earlier. In the 13th century on the height the Whistler in 12 came from modern Uralsk there was a Zolotudinsky settlement of Zayak which remains found at excavation. The name of the ancient settlement was conditionally appropriated by the modern Kazakh name of the river. Researchers showed that it was the large city which arose during blossoming of the Golden Horde in the 13th, 14th centuries. In the city inhabited estates, farm buildings, calcination furnaces for production of a brick and a bath, hammam were found. On the place of the city 2 large mausoleums were also found. Due to the falling of the Golden and Nogai Horde, the city lost the value, handicraft trade and trade began to fall. Uralsk isn't a successor of this settlement, it is located, approximately, in 10 km from the historical beginning of the city. Hudson stopped the existence still almost 2 centuries prior to his basis. During the Kazakh-Nogai War of the first quarter of the 16th century of Kasimhan, having won a victory over the Nogai Horde, for several years I included these lands in structure of the Kazakh Khanate. At the end of the 16th century on the bank of the Urals there are immigrants from Russian lands calling themselves Cossacks. In 1584 it is mentioned as the Yatsky town which was founded in Orishnoy's natural boundary by Yatsky Cossacks, formed of runaway Volgsky Cossacks. The Ataman Bogdan Barbosha is considered the founder of the Yatsky town. After ruined by his Nogai Tatars he in 1613 was postponed for 50 km below down the river Yek. Urals. On his modern place, 1613 is considered official date of foundation of the city. In 1988 the 375th anniversary of the city was widely celebrated. It was put on the peninsula between the Yek rivers, Urals, and Chagin. Now this district of the city is called Huts, from a word a hut, the Cossack dwelling. In 1591 Yatsky Cossacks became a citizen of Russia, but to Peter I they had full autonomy. In 1773-1775 Yatsky Cossacks became a kernel of a revolt of Yemelyan Pugachev. After defeat risen in 1775, the Empress Catherine II joined to rename the Yatsky town into Uralsk, and the Yak River into the Urals. However, disorders of Cossacks took place still more than once. So was in 1804, 1825, 1837, 1874. All disorders cruelly were suppressed with troops. Fishery, melon growing and cattle breeding were major activity of residents. Redfish yielded the main revenue to the city, and all his life was constructed just seeing fishing to another. The large role in life of the city was played by merchants. In the city there was the Tatar settlement. Tatars served in army, many were officers, but trade was their major activity. By the end of the 19th century in Uralsk there were about 100 Tatar hereditary noblemen, and from 450 people belonging to merchant families there were 300 Tatars. On a census of 1897 in the city of 6129 people considered Tatar native. They made a third of the population of Uralsk. Tatars were a peculiar link between Russia and the nomadic families of Kazakhs. In the Tatar printing houses of Uralsk the first newspapers in Kazakh were issued. In 1846 Uralsk was ranked as the category of big cities, having become large shopping center. Before the beginning of the 20th century Uralsk was the administrative center of the Ural region, the capital of the Ural Cossack army, was a part of the Orenburg province. On April 29, 1879 in an R.P.M. bell ringing in all churches announced to the city the fire which to 5 o'clock in the evening of the same day, destroyed up to 2/3 cities. The fire began in Novosyolsk, with the extreme house on the bank of the Urals, in the poorest part of the city where streets have width no more than 6 arshins. The house from the house separates only gate, buildings all exclusively wooden, all this part, number about 200 houses, no more as in an hour of time I turned into the fiery sea. Wind was quite strong and uneven. There were minutes it calmed down, but again was a storm and a mighty hurricane. Having pinched Novosyolsk, adjacent to the Urals clean, the fire rushed on the market square, and standing here in several rows of a bench several minutes embraced red goods a flame. This terrible minute in other part of the city, at all not on the way of the fire, more than a verst from him aside, other fire broke up. In the house of the quarter supervisor Kurin. In short time both fires connected in one and the sea of a flame, in width several quarters, on the way, downwind, destroyed all to the Shigana river. The city turned into hell, devastation terrible. In figures the measure of destruction is unknown. On the parties of the fire and in his back, on squares and on streets, from the survived and not survived houses it is brought property in carts and heaps, and, from this party, the city turned into a camp. Thousands of families remained homeless and bread. Human efforts could do nothing. The sky was clean, without cloudlet. But dense black smoke was so spread in air that in parts, free from the fire, was dark as in a bad weather, the sun couldn't punch the beams for lighting. Uralsk isn't able to burn little by little as other cities in Russia. Since the basis. Within 4 centuries he burns for the 3rd time. But burns completely in American. 100 years that Uralsk from this disorder recovered are necessary. Rumors about arsons go to different options in the people without a molka. Speak about an arrestovanie and a pososhenai in a jail during the fire. Some shady characters, but reliable nothing is present. 1894 The railroad which received a name Ryazan and Ural that served as a big incentive to further development of the city is brought to Uralsk. Except rough images of manufactories and factories, the locomotive depot appeared. Before the Civil War in the city there were 15 Edinoverchesty and Orthodox parish and cathedral churches. 4 more in the suburbs. 4 house temples, 4 mosques, several houses of worship. A considerable part of the Ural Cossacks remained old believers of various Soglasia, Beglepopovci, Chasoveni, Belokranitsky. Theater, the museum, several hospitals and libraries, female and men's classical gymnasiums, real school. Teachers' seminary, a set of schools, left several newspapers. Peter and Paul Cathedral on the place of the Peter and Paul Church. In Hargot Mary D. 1. Pugachev with Kosakostynia Kuznetsova. Burned in 1775-1776 by order of Catherine II. Now Cathedral, the monument to A.S. Pushkin stands still. During Civil War Uralsk was in the center of heavy fighting. Occupied by Bolsheviks in 1919, it was subjected to a long siege by the Ural Army. In days of the Great Patriotic War, the decision of the Council of War of the Stalingrad Front of October 16, 1942, Uralsk becomes a frontline zone and point of air defense of the country. To the city 20 soldiers of hospitals were evacuated from Center 14 of the industrial, working for the front enterprises. Military connections were formed. Future emperors Alexander II, Nicholas II visited the city as atamans of all Cossack troops of Russia. This rank was transferred to successors of a throne since the birth. At the same time Alexander made laying of Alexander Nevsky Cathedral in 1837, and Nicholas, the Cathedral of Christ the Saviour in the 1891. Pugachev began the campaign to Uralsk with the village of Budarinskoye, in 85 kilometers is lower across the Urals, took the city almost without striking a blow. Many years later old men said to Pushkin that they esteem his Tsar Piet to this day. The poet writes down the answer of Cossack Pianov to a question of Pugachev. He for you Pugachev, the old man answered me angrily, and for me he was the great sovereign Piet Fyodorovich. Suvorev was directed by the Empress Catherine the Great, frightened of scope of peasant war for her suppression, won several victories and conducted the first interrogations of Pugachev in Uralsk, and then transported under guard him to Moscow. Academicians A. Humboldt, Palace were in Uralsk as in a starting point of the Asian routes. I.A. Krylov, Little Vanya Krylov, the son of the Captain Andrei Krylov, one of heads of garrison of government troops, carried out at the father all siege of fortress of Cathedral of the Archangel Michael by Pugachevsky army. V.R. Derzavin. A.S. Pushkin arrived to Uralsk in the fall of 1833 accompanied by the Orenburg official 5. 1. Dull, future author of the dictionary, for collecting materials to Pugachev's rebellion history, talked to the Cossacks knowing Pugachev personally. You had to receive the last my letter from Orenburg. From there I went to Uralsk, the local ataman and Cossacks accepted me nicely, gave me 2 lunches, file for my health, gave me news in which I had need, and fed me with fresh caviar. and me made, from the letter of the poet to the wife. 5. 1. Dull within 8 years of the service in Orenburg repeatedly undertook trips to Uralsk and Pruralny steppes, for example in the 1833rd year of a visit to Uralsk of Pushkin.
Tull within 12 weeks wandered between the Cossack villages and the Kazakh halls, recorded songs and legends. One of the first studied the Kazakh eposes and Baiki and Moliana acquainted Russia with the steppe stories of Maine.
I was held in huge respect for the honesty and interest in edge. The Akimokambit Utemisov wrote the Orenburg Governor General Perovsky sent just officials who would penetrate into a distress. Especially we wish that our complaints were investigated by Mr. Lieutenant Colonel Dahl. Shukovsky accompanied the pupil, the successor of a throne, future Emperor Alexander II at his visit in 1837. It is interesting that Dahl, also former on a trip with Crown Prince, wrote down the words of one old Cossack: the imperial tribe wasn't seen before from the sovereign Piot Fydorovich. T.G. Shevchenko was in Uralsk short time on the way to Manguslav, where it was banished. The composer A. Alibayev directed city orchestra. 50. N. Tolstoy stayed in 1862 with the companion on Sevastopol Nakazny Ataman Anno Domini. Stolypin, the father of future reformer, on impressions of a trip wrote the story Cossacks. We live in the tilt cart, weather fine.
I found the friend Stolypin the Ataman in Uralsk and went to him and brought the clerk from there, but I dictate and I write a little.
The laziness overcomes at Kumas. Anno Domini. Stolypin, the father of future minister of the Russian Empire P.A. Stolypin appointed the Nakazny Ataman in 1857 left about themselves kind memory. At in the steppe dusty city began to be planted trees and shrubs strenuously. There were first boulevards, one of which bore his name subsequently. Besides, in Uralsk the constant theatre will be organized. Also the fact that Anno Domini. Stolypin actively promoted reconciliation with Church of a part of old believers on the basis of blessed church is important. Natives of Uralsk writers and journalists I. 1. Zelezin N.F. Savachev in the books and sketches with love described history, life and the culture of the fellow countrymen, the Cossacks, great contemporaries connected with the city and also acquainted with a way of life and the original culture of the Kazakh people. F. 1. Silipin at the beginning of the career in 1891 was on tours in local theatre, left very angry records about local dirt. We went to Uralsk, the city which struck me with abundance of dirt and lack of vegetation. In the middle of the city square there was a red brick building theatre. In him it was uncomfortable, disgusting, smelled of dead rats, and there was a heat as in a ban. We played in the script for Deceased Rats one performance, and next day there arrived Crown Prince and we were sent to the Ataman where he had breakfast, to sing songs on open air stage. We had a small chorus, but wonderful. 5. G. Korolenko worked in archive of the Ural Cossack Army from June to September 1900, looked for certificates of events of the Pugachev's rebellion, wrote sketches at Cossacks, and the Pugachevsky legend in the Urals. G. 2K, the Tatar poet, spent in Uralsk the childhood and youth in family of the sister of the father. From 1895 to 1907. Cooperated with local Tatar newspapers, began the poetic creativity. Stayed with friends, worked on the city and writers A.N. Tolstoy, K.A. Fedin, 5. V. Bianchi, Sakin Saifuline, Sabit Mukhanov, 5. D. Pravdukin and others fished in the Urals. From Uralsk there is a higher martyr Jacob Maskeyev. The Archbishop Barnel, the devotee honored in orthodoxy and the vigorous toiler on the Christ's field. Grigory Georgievich, the Olympic champion. 1972. On firing was born in the city slanting. Border between Asia and Europe. In the Soviet science it was accepted to draw line between Europe and Asia across the Mugodskar hills, two sources of the river Emba, further across Emba to the Caspian Sea. Earlier. Until the end of the 1950th years. The line of Europe within Kazakhstan was drawn on the bed of the Urals River. In April-May 2010 the expedition of the Russian Geographical Society came to a conclusion that the line of Europe should be drawn across the Mugodskar hills, on edge of Caspian depression where the East European plain comes to an end and there past the western ledges of the Steppe Plateau, that is still to the south, than now is considered to be.
So far the opinion of group of scientists of the Russian Geographical Society didn't pass assessment by such international organization as the International Geographical Union.
Climate in the city sharply continental. The dry hot summer and low snow, cold winter is frequent with strong winds. Average annual temperature, plus 6.2 C. Average annual speed of wind minus 2.9 m/s. Average annual humidity of air minus 70%. Through the beginning of 2021 the population of the city minus 234,155 persons, is a part of the territory of city Akamat of 318,731 persons. For the first time the line of the railroad was brought to Uralsk in 1894. It was the Ryazan-Uralsky Railroad.
Its station with turrets in style of the Central Asian minarets first was located quite far from the city, so Alexei Nikolaevich Tolstoy wrote that from the station he went to the city.
Through the steppe overgrown with cable columns.
Long time Uralsk remained the terminal station of the road connecting the city to the center of Russia. Then in 1936 the line to Uralsk, which established through traffic to other Kazakhstan and Siberia, was built.
During the Soviet period the city grew. Nowadays the station is practically in his central part. Due to the increasing number of passengers in the 1970th construction of the new station was required, the old monument of architecture of the 19th century at the same time was demolished. Now there is a regular passenger traffic by the interstate railroad with the old and new capitals of Kazakhstan, the cities of Almaty and Nur-Sultan. The Uralsk airport after reconstruction of the 1990th years received the status of the airport of the international value, is located in 16 kilometers from the city, near the suburban settlements of Steppe. On July 3, 2019 repair work on modernization of the terminal of the airport is begun. After modernization, the passenger traffic will increase from 160,000 to 350,000 people, and the area of the terminal will increase from 4,000 m up to 7,500 m. According to the AKIM of the West Kazakhstan region, this value isn't a limit as the airport has very favorable geographic location. After reconstruction of the runway, I am capable to accept all aircrafts of type SIL-76, to -134, to -154, Yak-42, Boeing 737, Boeing 757. As of 2021, the airport makes flights to Frankfurt am Main, Aktau, Shymkent, Turkestan, Nur-Sultan, Almaty. Public transport is presented by bus routes. In Soviet period, construction of trolleybus lines was planned, but with the collapse of the USA these projects were forgotten. Regularly time in several years tenders between the enterprises for the right of service of route lines are held.
Routes undergo numerous changes in connection with construction of city new buildings in the remote residential districts and aspiration to optimization and fuller coverage by lines of the urban area.
Fare on routes is 80 tenges, the adult ticket, 40 tenges, the children's ticket. From 7-15 years. Since August 1, 2017. In the city, official taxi services significantly having moved and regulated private carrying were widely adopted. Now there are not less than 10 taxi companies competing among themselves. Distance from Uralsk to the large cities. On highways. The wooden Archangel Michael Church in Hods, constructed in Mikhail Fyodorovich Romanov's reign, was the first subject to religious purpose of the Yatsky town. On his place the stone cathedral is built subsequently. At resettlement of residents of the Kursanovsky settlement, the temple in honor of the prelate Alexei of the Metropolitan was transferred from there. The Peter and Paul Church became the third monument of religious architecture.
The Ural temples initially belonged to the Russian Church on the rights in Edinovaria, with commission of a church service at respect for all features of an old ceremony.
At the same time they were a part of the Kazan diocese, keeping self-government.
Under the influence of Igisky monasteries, a part Ural was inclined the 1780th years towards the Begla-Popovtsy, which center was an Uspensky chapel, with the death of the priest Vasily
Sokolav. Reconstructed in Edinoverchesty Church of the Assumption subsequently. Consecration of Church of the Assumption led to division of Cossacks into Church and Chasoveni. Chasoveni accepted to themselves the priests put by the Orthodox bishop, keeping at the same time independence of the communities. Monasteries, Sergievsky men's and Sadovsky women's became the most important centers of religious life. In 1837 Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, both Edinoverchesky Pridotichensky and Krestovozovonsky churches were put. After the addressing and Edinovaria of Igisky monasteries, the Ataman Arkady Stolypin carried out active work on overcoming split in Uralsk, as a result of which the Sergievsky monastery voluntarily joined Orthodox Church, and on the bank of Shagin Street. Nicholas Blessed Church was built. The Sergievsky monastery was transferred to the neighborhood of the settlement of Turkle and gave rise to Nikolsky Monastery. At the same time, a part of Old Believers didn't join to an Edinovaria, having actually turned into Bispopovets of Chasoveni consent. Along with this direction, the having houses of worship were also widespread. Fedosevsky, Poma, Beglepopovci, Austriano-Krusnitsky and Neo-Krusnitsky consent. The church became the major institute in the sphere of national education. The spiritual school and parish schools worked in the city. The Russian Kazakh school was open. Attempts of missionary work among the nomadic population were conducted. At the time of the revolution, 11 Edinovochesky and 2 Novobryadsky temples, 2 Edinovochesky monasteries, 4 house churches worked in the city. Along with Orthodoxy and Old Belief, in the city other faiths were presented: Lutheranism, Catholicism, a part of Tatars I practiced Islam of Sunni sense, and Kalmyks, the Buddhism. On November 7, 1908, the Ural diocese headed by the Bishop Tikhon Obolensky, who was earlier the managing director of Edinovochesky Arrivals of the Samara diocese, is founded. In 2008 in Uralsk, the Catholic Church of God's Mother of the Continued Help appeared. Now there is an arrival. In the Tatar settlement there is Red Mosque, 1871. A monument of architecture of local value. Monuments of architecture are also Cathedral of the Archangel Michael, Gold Church, Iron Predotechis Temple. For years of Independence Street. Nicholas Church, the Pokrovsk convent are restored. Works on restoration of the former men's Edinovochesky Nikolov monastery are conducted. According to a population census of 2009 of 57.2% of the population of the territory of city Akamat Muslims made, 39.1% were made by Christians, mainly Orthodox. Judaism adhered to 0.09% of the population, the Buddhism -0.03%. Faithless themselves was called by 3.0% of the population, and 0.6% of inhabitants refused to answer a question of religion.
Uralsk is the center of the Ural and Akhtubinsk Diocese of Russian Orthodox Church and also the Kazakhstan Diocese of the Russian Orthodox Old Belief Church.
Sites. The downtown generally kept the historical appearance, despite destruction in 1920th and 1930th of a set of cathedrals and churches. The oldest building of the city, the Cathedral of the Archangel Michael, constructed in the 1740th years. Once around Cathedral the fortification was located.
During the Pugachev's rebellion, the risen Cossacks besieged the group of the government troops sent after suppression of a revolt of 1772 which was located in fortress, but couldn't take it.
The cathedral was twice closed at the Soviet power.
It was finally returned to anniversary of the Christianization of Kievan Rus thanks to activity of initiative group under the leadership of the Archpriest Vladimir
Kerchashnikov.
Near Cathedral there is a house of the father of the Teryevi bride, Rich Cossack Kuznetsov, in Yemelyan Pugachev's house museum now.
The second in time constructions, the temple, Krestovo-Kupolny Edinovochesky Street.
John the Baptist Church, is put in 1837, consecrated in 1849. From the middle of the 20th century is used as the warehouse, despite long attempts of believers to return the building.
Other remained cathedral in the downtown, the Cathedral of Christ the Savior. In the People, Gold Church.
It is constructed in honor of the 300th anniversary of service of the Ural Cossack Army to the Moscow Tsar, which was marked out in 1891.
Crown Prince, future Emperor Nicholas II took part in laying of the temple. It is remarkable that according to the initial plan, construction of huge cathedral was supposed. But after the base was finished, it became clear that there is no money left for completion of construction. As a result, on the huge base there is an elegant church of the modest sizes. In the 1930th years, a big part of other cathedrals and churches of Uralsk was blown up and destroyed. From bricks of Kozanskaya Edinoverchesty Church, the teacher training college. Nowadays West Kazakhstan State University of Utemsev. On the place of the main thing of Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, the square was built. Bricks of many others paved sidewalks on which it is possible to walk to this day. One of the oldest and dear buildings of Uralsk, the Atamansky House, the residence of the Nakazny Ataman. His facade is decorated with commemorative plaques, demonstrating that in it stopped during arrival to Uralsk great Pushkin, Shukovsky, Dal, Tolstoy. That here crown princes and future emperors Alexander and Nikolai stayed, it is possible to read only in historical documents.
The building is built in 1825 on the project of the Italian army architect M.
Del Medino for the Ataman D.M. Borodin, subsequently was redeemed as constant. Rooms of the Nakazny Ataman and the private persons coming to Uralsk. In Soviet period it was loved as the House of Pioneers with numerous circles. Is slightly later, in the 1830th, the building of the Ural Army Office, later Army Board, was built.
In the building also public library and army archive, in which in 1900 I studied the documents relating to the Pugatyovsky revolt. The writer Korolenko was placed.
By the way, and now here too there is a library for children and young people. The building is built in classical style by one more army architect, A. Gopius, the graduate of Academy of Arts. It is necessary to mention that architects had to be more fortificated than projects of numerous fortresses and outposts on an ambit, and also barracks and military warehouses in the city were formed, many of which also remained. The building of regional Achamet, in the past the Russian Commerce and Industry Commercial Bank. Each new generation of the Ural boys is afraid to put a hand in an open mouth of the lions who are in niches of an entrance. It is constructed in 1896 by the architect A. Wankin. On the parties of a balcony the building was decorated in turn by sculptures of Cossacks with huge sturgeons, then the traditional Soviet worker and the collective farmer. After the revolution the building was occupied by councils of working deputies and their executive committees. Many old buildings continue to serve according to the initial appointment. Strasser's Drugstore, the first city cinema in the mansion of the General Anikhin, nowadays a name of Gagarin, serves visitors, in an army gymnasium to this day, Natural and Geographical Faculty of the University, in Army Real School, Teacher Training College, an Army Hospital, private medical polyclinic.
The Ural Regional Historical Museum is located in the building of the Russian Kyrgyz Craft School.
Before revolution of Kazakhs in government documents called by Kyrgyz. Constructed in the 1888 years. One of the most known buildings in Uralsk, the house of the merchant A.T. Kharov built at a turn of 19-20 centuries throughout long time the biggest building of the city. On a legend, having quarreled with the friend merchant Ovchinnikov, liking to have in the mornings tea on a balcony of the house and to meet sunrise, Kharov promised that Ovchinnikov will never more see rising. And it is valid. The house built on the opposite side of the street closed itself the east for Ovchinnikov, who remained also at home forever. To argue in size and on beauty probably, and to bypass, with the house of the merchant Kharov, only the house of merchant Svanyashnik could. In the wonderful house built in the 70th years of the 19th century, the commercial club, agricultural technical school, in the years of war, the military college evacuated from Odessa was located subsequently, then the House of Pioneers, now School Lyceum of Aliya Moldagulova, was translated here. Monuments. Since pre-revolutionary times in Uralsk only the rotunda established at Anno Domini Stolypin remained. Once in it the bust of Crown Prince Nikolai Alexandrovich, the son of the Emperor Alexander II, carrying a rank of the Ataman of all Cossack troops who died in 1865, was located.
In 1891, on the place of burial of the Cossacks bundled by Kutkin to the 1803 year-on fashion of those years, the triumphal arch in honor of the 300th anniversary of service of army to the Tsar and in honor of arrival of the successor Nikolai Alexandrovich was established.
Red Gate, as they were called in the city, were destroyed in the same 30th years of the 20th century. During the Soviet period in the city, Lenin's monuments with the stretched hand, Stalin, busts of the participants of civil war connected with Uralsk, Chapaeva and Fermanova, Kirov's bust in the city park which was long bearing his name were established. At the moment all of them are exposed on one of avenues of the park, except a monument to Stalin which was demolished in the years of fight against a cult of personality.
Later in the 1980th, one more monument to 5.1.
Chapaev, on a horse in the fluttering felt cloak and with a checker in a hand, was placed into the station square. One more remarkable monument connected with the period of civil war is devoted to the young fighter Misha Gavrilov. In the post-Soviet years, calls to demolish this monument to the killed horse were made, but it survived. Now the monument is opposite to Military and Technical School. Among monuments to participants of the Great Patriotic War, a monument to three heroines Manship Mametovoy, Aliya Moldagulovoy and Hiwazda Spanovoy, and a bust of the Marshal G.K. Shukov. To the 40th anniversary of the victory in 1985 on the bank of the Urals, the memorial with the eternal flame and a steel, portraits of heroes of the Soviet Union from Uralsk and area and a bas-relief with the list of all died Ural residents was erected. Later the list of the Ural residents who died in Afghanistan was added to them. In days of independence of Kazakhstan in Uralsk, monuments to Pushkin, Sholahov, Kazakh poet and thinker Tuabay and the head of an anti-governmental revolt of the end of the 18th century Sirim Tatov, the writer local historian N. Savachev appeared.
In the depth of the Hansky Grove, in a shadow of the overgrown avenue, there is an obelisk of imperial times, on it an inscription which says that on this place Tsars took the oath from Khans of an internal heart.
Parks and squares. One more of the remained historical places of Uralsk, the being Army Giving, nowadays City Recreation Park, the park, oldest in the Republic, put in 1840. Sagana, located on the picturesque coast, with bicentennial oaks, the park is already a lot of years the most favorite place of Ural residents. Within the city are also the Hansky Grove, at the place of confluence of Ural and Shagan, and Privoloknia Grove, with soldiers Staritsa, the old riverbed of the Urals. The Hansky Grove received the name at the venue of the Oath of Khans of the Internal Horde. It was repeatedly officially renamed, in 1891 into Crown Prince's Grove, into Soviet period into Gorky's Grove, but in the people always remained Hanska. The small monument on the venue of the first working Mayovkas remained. In the downtown on the place of the destroyed Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, a small cozy public garden. In his center there was a bust of a Nachdiva 5. 1. Chapiev, nowadays a monument of the poet fellow countryman Zhubin Moldagaliev. Unfortunately, many other squares, gardens and boulevards of the city were forgotten in connection with the recent building of the city, as Pushkin's Garden, which remained on boondocks of Regional Hospital, or the former Stolipinsky Boulevard covered with the Teachers' College building, are built up during the current construction boom. Culture. Now in the city are available Regional Kazakh Drama Theater of H. Bukiva, the Ural-Russian Drama Theater of A.N. Ostrovsky, Regional Philharmonic Hall of Garifula Kamangaliev, 12 museums, 5 movie theaters, 11 palaces of culture and clubs, 24 libraries with book fund more than 1 million volumes. At the same time to the Ural Theater of A.N. Ostrovsky more than 160 years, it is the oldest drama theater in Kazakhstan. Concerts of national variety and choreographic ensemble Jest Zayaikin Nazirka, Dancing Studio, Adazio, the Yakushka Children's Choir, Ural residence ensembles under control of Natalia Komarova, Mikhailev Day, the children's and adult structures of Ural Cossacks ensemble under control of A, etc. Enjoy Carnival over wide popularity at citizens. The powerful contribution in the cultural capacity of the city is brought by masters of a literary feather and the fine arts. Names of local prose writers and poets 5. D. Kravdukin N. Korsanov by A. Bfet. Yalfamov A. Baktijariva E. Babasov B. B. Pishkin T. Azovskaya S. Nabulin A. Narikov A. M. Svitinin and works of the artist S. Kumareva, widely known in Kazakhstan. In cultural life of the city, representatives of community of historians, local historians A. She. Tregabayev 5. V. Kyatishchev A. Z. Kurlapov, G. 50. Makin, the authoritative expert in history of the Cossacks, Sania Signieva, etc. are of great importance. The large center of Slavic and Tatar culture is the National Museum, Old Uralsk, which is carrying out big publishing work. Education. The first educational institution in the city opened in 1812. According to Brockhaus and Efron, by the beginning of the 20th century in Uralsk there were 27 educational institutions, with 22 pupils of both sexes. 1440 boys and 782 girls.
The Ural Army Real School was transformed in 1890-91 from a classical gymnasium.
Training for Cossacks free was financed army and treasury.
19 teachers, 287 pupils, including 141 people.
49.2% of Cossacks. At school, the Natural Historical Museum functioned. An army female gymnasium. 10 teachers, 6 teachers, 283 pupils, from them 149 Cossacks minus 52. 6%. Spiritual school, the Russian Kojai School of Craft pupils with School of the Diploma, School of Army choristers and musicians. In vicinities, at an army farm, the lowest agricultural school. The lowest schools are divided into parish and army. In the building of spiritual school, the art and graphic faculty of Teachers College, nowadays Pushkin Hotel, was placed subsequently. Today to specify 52 comprehensive schools from 2,000 teachers numbering over 40,000 pupils function.
Along with schools, 16 out-of-school institutions on development of versatile interests, 7 technical training colleges in which about 4,000 pupils study work.
Training of specialists with secondary vocational education is carried out by pedagogical, medical, registration and trade, musical, polytechnical, agrarian and legal colleges.
Now in Uralsk higher educational institutions work.
The West Kazakhstan University of M. UTEMSEV, the West Kazakhstan Agrarian and Technical University of Zimbabwe of the Khan, Eurasian Academy Educational Scientific Industrial Complex.
It is created as a result of merging of the West Kazakhstan Institute of Management and the Eurasia Languages and the Ural Academy of Work in a social relationship.
The West Kazakhstan Engineering Humanities University.
War entered the Kazakhstan University of Innovative and Telecommunication Systems, the West Kazakhstan Engineering and Technological University, SKITU, and the West Kazakhstan Humanitarian Academy, AKGA.
And also branches of the Kazakh Legal University, the Kazakh Academy of Work and a Social Relationship. In total, in higher education institutions of the city, more than 22.5 thousand students study at internal and correspondence offices.
History of the press of the city originates since 1867, when in Uralsk there was first issue of the Uralsky Voiskovy Vedomosti newspaper.
Later, Ural resident, Yatsky Will, the Turkic newspapers, Fikir Alash. As of 2019, newspapers are issued. The Ural Week, Inform Bershe, my city, Jay shouted. End Time, City Pulse, Susural Area, Hope, Week. Work with radio. After radio ends, Talip FM, Dacha. The industry of Uralsk is represented by branches of power, mechanical engineering, food, flour grinding, the easy industries, the construction and material industry.
In the city, the plants of Jest Priborostroitldy, the Omega plant, Jest Uralsky, the Zenit plant, Jest Scientific Research Institute Kadroprabor entering into Jest Kazakhstan Engineering National Company work.
In addition, in the city, the plant on production of construction materials of Jest West Kazakhstan Corporation of Construction Materials functions. Hydromasha Mobist LP, the company entering into the Hydromasha Investment Company Holding, specializing in production of reinforced concrete structures and products for road, industrial and civil engineering.
Uralsk. In the past, the Ural repair plant, founded in 1955, makes fire cars, special equipment for transportation of liquid hydrocarbons now.
Due to the intensive development of oil and gas production in the western Kazakhstan, many enterprises in Uralsk are focused on release of the equipment connected with oil processing, production and transportation of oil.
The pipe metallurgic company Kazakhstan Enterprise, which is a part of Pipe Metallurgical Olorado,
produces pump and compressor and casing pipes which are used in the oil and gas industry.
West Kazakhstan Engineering Company, one of leading enterprises in Kazakhstan on development and production of the power and oil processing equipment.
The nitric plant located in the item Zakhagansk makes the cryogenic products necessary for the oil and gas sector, the industry, agriculture, objects of housing construction of the western Kazakhstan.
In the field of mechanical engineering, Ural Foundry and Mechanical Plant, personal computers are also presented. Ural Mechanical Plant LP, Kazakhstan LP. The only centralized source of heat supply of the city is the thermal power plant, the 58.52 MW Ural combined heat and power plant.
Teplenergo. In 2011 near page. Brand new the 54 MW Ural JAP, which also provides electrical supply to the city, is put into operation. Ural plant and it is created on the basis of evacuated in 1941 from Leningrad of the Dvigatel plant as the plant of K.E. Voroshilov. During war are released special naval arms, the self-directed torpedoes and sea mines. For merits in providing army and fleet in days of the Great Patriotic War, the plant only among the enterprises of Kazakhstan was awarded the Order Patriotic War of 1 degree. After war I was the only plant in the USA making trawling arms of the fleet. Production of mobile launchers of anti-ship missiles was added to the 1980th to numeracy subject. More than 40 years the history of the plant was connected with a name of Pyotr Alexandrovich Atoyin. The plant is included into structure of the enterprises of defense industry complex, which main objective is ensuring defense capability of the country by implementation of the state defense orders and release of special purpose competitive products. In 1993 the enterprise was transformed to joint stock company, and in 2003 on the basis of the government resolution ARC was a part of Jestkank Nacionalnaya Kompania, Kazakhstan Engineering. Now the enterprise is focused on release of the special equipment, boats and ships, the equipment for the oil and gas industry and also civil products and consumer goods. Now priority development was gained by production of warships and boats.
The main part of products of the plant is made by products of shipbuilding, the start to development of which was given after a release in 1993 of the resolution of the Cabinet of the Republic of Kazakhstan, according to which the plant was determined by head enterprise by vessel construction for law enforcement agencies of the Republic.
For this period the plant developed Massachusetts production of boats with the displacement up to 50 tons. These are boats of the Berg Project 0200 and the Project 100 Sanker, which are handed over to the customer, the border service of non-ARC, and are operated on the Caspian Sea. As a result of introduction of the investment project, development of sea shipbuilding, at the plant the production case is reconstructed, the production technology of vessels of a new class with the displacement about 240 tons with the case from steel is mastered.
In 2006 the head sample of such chip of the Leopard project 0300, then the second chip of the same project which together with the bolts made by the plant bear the service on protection of sea borders of the Republic of Kazakhstan on the Caspian Sea is constructed and put in operation.
Now the third ship of the Leopard project 0300 which was planned to delivery to the customer in 2010 is under construction.
On the created production base the plant continued development of new types of specialized sea vessels with the displacement up to 200 tons.
Result of development: a head sample of the high-speed boat of the FE project. In October 2009 it was floated in Uralsk, and then successfully passed mooring, trial and acceptance tests on the Caspian Sea and is handed over to the customer for protection of territorial waters of frontier patrol for the purpose of suppression of illegal navigation, illicit operations, with high speed and maneuverable characteristics. Speed 53 knots or 98 km/h, draft no more than 0.9 m, crew -8 people. This new project of the boat will allow the Coast Guard of the Border Service of Nanark of a message effective fight against the fast-moving purposes, the violators of sea borders of the Republic and poachers conducting illegal fishing in the Kazakhstan sector of the Caspian Sea. The plan together with the customer, the Border Service of Nanark, has practices and plans for other new projects of boats and ships with the displacement up to 350 tons. Together with it, technical and production capabilities, intellectual and personnel potential, existence of the certified quality management system conforming to requirements of the international ISO 9001 standard. 2000 and also the certificate confirming compliance of the enterprise to requirements of the Russian Maritime Register of Shipping on implementation of design, construction, re-equipment, modernization and repair of vessels, case designs, the ship equipment, allow the plant to release vessels and watercrafts with the displacement up to 500 tons and to provide their transportation down the river the Urals to the Caspian Sea. In the 1970th years in Uralsk production of large caliber machine guns at the Metallist plant, devices for the fleet at the Omega plant and the Ural branch Central Research Institute Gidropribor was organized. In Uralsk, the only enterprise in the Republic for processing of vegetable medicinal raw materials, just Kazakhlakritsa functions. Now it is started in the village of Kushum. On the basis of a Solodkovy route the pharmaceutical enterprises produce such effective drugs as Tugensyra, etc., which are in great demand in the world market. In development of the industry of the city, the Karakaganakoy gas condensate field located in 150 km from Uralsk in the territory of Berlinsky district is of great importance. It is the most important object of the Republic not only on gas, but also on extraction of liquid hydrocarbons. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.